All right, we'll jump straight into it.
Yeah, no worries.
Mate, thanks for coming on. Excited to have a little bit of a chance to sit down and chat with you. I'm interested, just to kickstart the conversation, what originally sort of got me interested in having a chat to you is the fact that sport is obviously it's a hot topic on so many people's lips around Australia, especially here in Melbourne, almost the hub of sport. And one of the things I've heard time and time again is, it's beautiful to play the big game. It's beautiful to play in front of a big audience. But then when the camera's off, when the game's done, when you get home, you're trying to figure out what comes next. It's a difficult transition to make.
Yep.
And what I like about yourself is, I'm a little bit biased as well as a Carlton supporter.
Sorry.
Yes, it's been a brutal couple of years. We'll get into that later. We'll warm up first.
Yeah, thanks. Let me prepare.
Is the fact that you've opened the conversation, and I think as an athlete myself, or a former athlete, it's just a conversation that hasn't been had. I'd love to just hear a bit about your journey into getting this conversation started, because it's obviously a subject that's close to home.
Yeah, look, playing at the top has its pros and cons, as you obviously stated. But I think the hard thing for me is it's becoming such a business in itself, sport these days, as you said. And you come in as an athlete, a young kid that sort of, plays sport. Yeah, he's pretty dedicated and gives up a lot throughout his junior days to chase his dream. And then you finally make it, and then all of a sudden you realise you're at the bottom of the barrel again, and you've got to make your way back up, and you're competing against what is such a competitive environment. You've got 44 blokes competing for 22 spots. Yeah. And not only that, you've probably got thousands and thousands of people competing for the, 800 spots on an AFL list. But when you make it to the top, and I was sort of one that was never really secure in his spot. I always had to fight for my position, being a fringe player, which that's no disrespect. But then when it's all over, you sort of go, wow, welcome to reality. And then it just sort of struck me, and I was like, since the age of I don't know, 8, I was always known as Dennis the sports person. Whatever it was, footy, school footy, rugby, badminton with mates, you're always known as the sports person. Then all of a sudden you've announced your retirement. It's like, what is my identity? What do I identify as now? And it sort of took you a while to sort of realise that there's more to a person than just that brand. You're looking at, we live in a world now where everything's about a title. Everyone wants that business card that says something that gives them a hierarchy in an environment. But I sort of started to realise that, transitioning is a tough thing. Some work very hard at it during their career and transition smoothly. Some work very hard at it and then transition rough and everything in between. But I just sort of thought it's time as athletes too, though, we change our ways and look for understand that your sport is your job for a lot, but there's so much more out there than just sport. Yeah,
because I think, as you mentioned, the young kids and the team that you are fighting to actually be a part of, I think from the outside, so often sitting in the audience, you just assume, oh, what a great job. Like, you just come up here, play footy each week, pretty cruisy, make some money, massive audience, people know your name. But as you said, like if you're in a position where you're one of a fringe players who's trying to keep their name or trying to keep their feet in that side for a week, it could be a stressful kind of role. Was that something that you found difficult when you were playing at the top level, just to constantly questioning what the next couple of months looks like in terms of how many games you've played and what contracts and stuff look like?
Next week, I think.
Yeah.
Look, it was one of those things. I found the AFL environment very stressful.
Yeah.
Money, you get tarnished with the brush that you're rich, yet a lot of us aren't. The AFL average wage doesn't include anyone that doesn't play a game and didn't include rookies when they were on the list. So, that brings it right back down, and you've got a minority that bump it up, and I think, the money's well due, and good luck to them, But you're suddenly in a 24/7 job. You got to watch everything you do, how you speak, how you act, how you are, walking down a street, being in a place like this, you get looked at. And not only that, then the increase in social media towards the latter half of my career, and what people call you behind a computer screen, and you go out there and you go, you know what, I gave it my all, and sometimes it doesn't work out and sometimes it does, but there's been games where I've had very bad games, but I've had a crack and I've tried, and you go home and hear this, you hear that, you see that, you read this. And, you know, for me, it was just important that I had great mentors. I've got a great wife, you know, good mates, and close teammates as well that I could talk to. Because otherwise I can quite easily see the stresses, how you could beat yourself up. And if you don't have an outlet, if you don't have people to talk to, you don't have those things that drag you away from the sport. I was studying podiatry at my time during football. If you don't have those, you know, I love me golf. If you didn't have these things that sort of dragged you away, for me anyway, it would have been a very tough run, I reckon.
A little bit of a pressure valve just to let go on the outside once you leave that ground. Eh?
Oh, look, mate, I remember nights where, you know, you finish a game and you're staying up till 4 o'clock, just thinking. You've got to be at the club at 7 o'clock the next day or 8 o'clock the next day, and you just can't shut off. And, you know, there's been days, mate, where, you know, let's be honest, I think it was 2010, I cost us a semi-final against Sydney where I went and play on and got tackled. And, you know, people always remember you as that, and you sort of sit there and go, that one moment sort of tarnishes you, you know what I mean, in a way. And you sort of sit there and, you know, think about it, dwell on it. Semi-final, we were good back then, you know, what could have been. And you sort of sit there and you go, oh, you know, it's not just that one moment that loses a game. And, you know, you do hear that, but then you also sit there and go, well, that was the one moment that cost us a game. So, you know, and then you hear people and what they say. And but then I like to think that my attitude, my community work, my ability to give back to people, you know, with my philosophy of live to give and help others, I think that sort of gave me the brand that I received at Carlton Footy Club.
Yeah, and I can imagine like being in an elite sporting environment like that and dealing with this constant pressure. I guess, like, do you feel you're constantly being critiqued as a footballer rather than as a whole person? And your motto, live to give, I can understand it's probably something that's come out of being refined by fire, and it's easy to look back now and maybe speak
definitely
about. I read your ebook and some of the insights that were coming out of that. I was like, okay, this is a bloke who's been through the ring a little bit in terms of what he's had to deal with, the pressures of elite sport, and it's something that I'm excited to chat to you a little more about it, because I think when you speak about elite sport, that subject of mental health, though it's starting to come up a little more now,
definitely,
or the pressures that go along with elite sport, it's just not something that's really talked about. And I don't know, someone in your position who's got the opportunity, you're finally playing at the level that you dreamed of playing at since you were a young kid. Was there any pressure to feel as though you had to act in a way to show, hey, like, yeah, my life is in order, my life is together? Because I know a social media feed says a whole nother story to what real life might say. That's
just a big show, isn't it, really? So, pressures to act a certain way. I've always been that I am who I am. I act a way. I'm a big believer that, you know, you treat those well, you'll get treated well. You know, I'm of a believer of, like, we're only as strong as our weakest link. I remember a coach telling me that when I was a young kid, and my coach was actually my father. And I just remember sort of saying, well, you know, how can I live in a manner that helps the weakest links, you know, and raises them up, so then our weakest link isn't as low. But I sort of sat there and, you've got to say certain things, do certain things, be a certain way. You know, I remember one year having long dreadlocks at Carlton Footy Club, and they lasted 3 weeks. They cost me $1,300 to last 3 weeks, and got told, you know, that's not the way we look around here. You know, that's not our way. That's not who we are. And I sort of struggled for a little bit there, because I was like, the angst of, like, we're all individuals. Who tells me how I have to live my life? As long as I'm respectful of others, and, you know, I don't harm or do anything wrong or ill will to anyone else, I think, well, why can't I live the way I want to live? That's what makes this world a great place. And you know, when you're getting pushed into the old cliche, you talk to a nice lady when you're younger, you get tarnished as a footballer, you know, and for minority, you know, and it happens in the whole of world. But I just sort of sit there and go, you know, like, why can't I just be me? But that's the pros and cons of footy and sport. You know, you've got to put on a show, I guess, both on and off the field. And, you know, you do that for 10 years, you know, for myself, for instance. When it does end, you sort of go, wow, what now? You know, like, how, who, when, why? And the routine, like, obviously you spoke about the ebook, but, you know, we're very fortunate in elite sports, you know, that you get a lot given to you. You know, your medical's looked after, you've got doctors, you know. I still remember having players asking me how to book a doctor's appointment once they leave footy, because they've never had to do it, you know. And you sort of sit there and you go like, yeah, you take a lot for granted too. Like there's a lot of perks in the industry, and you speak about the mental health now. They're starting to, welfare coaches and all of that now in footy clubs, and we're very lucky. But you also have the tough times as well that you can't speak about. The biggest one for me, to sum it all up, is you're in an environment where you have to put on this shield of armour, be tough. You're out there, they say footy's like war, you're battling every week. You're battling against 44 blokes for a position, then you're battling 22 opposition that are out to get you that week, and you get told, like, I've got to show strength. You might be slightly sore, but you got to push on. And then when you leave the game, you get told, all right, open up and come and tell us everything and all your issues. And it's like, it's so chalk and cheese. And that was what I probably battled with the most, because, I'm sort of at that ilk where it's like, push on, you'll be right. It's only a little soreness, or it's a little bit of sadness, and push on. But as I've grown up and matured a little bit more in the brain, and you sort of realise, sometimes you sort of think, what if I did speak earlier? Where could I have been? Instead of 145, I could be 245. I don't know. I could have been less. I don't know. But you sort of sit there and you just sort of go, I think in life it's crucial to have those people around you, but it's also crucial to understand your journey and be able to stop and reflect on where you are each day and where you're at in your ecosystem, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think one thing I love about a bloke like you and what you're doing at the moment is footy, on the outside at least. It's a masculine sport. The idea of speaking about your insecurities, though I know to some degree when you form the close relationships in a footy club, I've been there.
Yeah.
The opportunity to speak about it, it's possible, but it's still something you want to have a bloody close relationship before you open up about. Because I know there's that certain expectation that you're a man. You got to get your emotions under control. And as you say, it's a definition of a brutal. It's a man's sport. You're out there at war. The idea of showing too much emotion is not something that is talked about a lot. But one thing I loved, just standing on the boundaries, watching you guys at Park Orchards a couple of weeks ago, was as soon as you found out you're in the finals, I saw tears running down your face. I thought, you know what, it's a bloody nice thing to be able to do. And I heard a couple of girls as you ran past go, I love Dennis. And I think I love Dennis now too. Is that something that you've had to work on, being open with how you're feeling emotionally, or is that something that you're conscious about, just to be real with the boys and go, hey mate, this is special?
Oh, look, for me, mate, like I said at the start, it's just be who you are. And if emotions get to you, mate. I'm a crier in movies.
Me too.
I cried.
You're in such good company.
I cried in Click, mate. You know what I mean? And that's a comedy. So, I'm not. But like I said, like you go back to the Park Orchards, to find out that you made finals. Your first year as a senior coach, you still don't even know if you really know what you're doing. You're trying to learn, you're trying to grow, you're trying to pick as many brains as possible. You sort of go into what was a week where we needed a lot of things to go our way. And when they did, it just sort of, overcome me. And I sort of just, bent over, tears come down, and the assistant coach comes up to me and goes, "You all right, mate?" And I said, "I just can't help it. I can't help it." Like walking up this, and to know it's bigger than you, and that's what I love about the community football. That's why I've gone back into it. The body and the footy ain't what it used to be, but the ability to belong to something that's bigger than you and have influence over such young men, and try to help coach them and guide them in their journeys that are just beginning, both footy and life. But not only that, to see the older statesmen, the fans, the young kids that high five you, it's such a sense of belonging. But it's a community within a community, and I think that's the thing that I really love about footy. You're at the elite level, you don't have that as much because it is so competitive. It is a business. It is, it's like I said, it's work. It's a business. They're trying to make money and they're trying to use their tools to make money and put on a good show. And when you're at local level, it's a little bit more raw, and I think that got to me a little bit. Like I said, mate, I am who I am. You are who you are, and it's just, there's no right or wrong. I think we got to come to agreement of that. It's just, if I cry, mate, it's because I care or I'm sad, one of the two, and I can't help that. That's what it is. And if someone's going to judge me, well, they're probably not in my environment or my ecosystem anyway. Whereas if they, put an arm around me or lift me up or whichever way it is, well then they're probably invited in.
Yeah, that's good. And, working down there with those young kids, you touched on it briefly a moment ago. There's obviously so much you're doing with your business fight club,
Yep.
and what we've already touched on a little bit in this interview. But just going into a role as a senior coach and just trying to take some values down there. What are some of the key points that you're sharing with the young fellas and the blokes that are looking up to you down there?
Yeah, look, mate, I still think I don't know what I'm doing from day to day, but I think, mate, the thing for me is it's all the little things, and I think for me it's if you get in footy, if you get told to push to the cone, or it's a 100-metre run the 100 metres, and these are little details, respect, belief, reliability, trust, courage. Courage isn't just necessarily like I'm tough and I've got a big bicep. Courage to me is speak when it's an awkward conversation. Have a conversation if you don't agree with something, or pump someone up if you do agree with something. Celebration. I think as men we lose that ability to celebrate things. It's got to be some big, massive, mountainous thing to celebrate, whereas it can be just a little thing. But mate, for me it's just about building relationships. I'm a big relationship person. I love people. I love talking to people. I love getting to know people. I love meeting new people. I love learning from new people. The world's got so many books, but I think everyone's a book in themselves, and if you can read those people and get to know them, you can learn so much. And I think that's where I'm trying to encourage these guys that some of these blokes at my local football can do things that I've never been able to do, and I want to learn from them as they should want to learn from each other. And I think understanding that Park Orchards is a football club. We've got 22 guys that are responsible for that job done, but there's so much more behind that.
Yeah, it's obviously a big part of what you do day to day, looking after the footy club, and I can see the Business Fight Club shirts. It's a nice design, by the way. Great movie as well, for what it's worth. What are you doing with yourself? Because I reading through your ebook, it was just interesting, and I touched on it earlier, just to hear about that transition from elite level footy, and I found listening to your wife's perspective really interesting. Just going that last couple of months where it's like, far, it looks like I'm going to be out of contract. And it was interesting just to hear her saying, like, I can't be the sole income earner. That's obviously a stressful
I wish you could, mate. I'd sit on the couch all day. But look, my wife was super. I probably looked to retire probably 12 months previous to when I actually did. My wife sat me down and said, "No, you got to go around again," because of that. I wasn't ready. I wasn't set up to take the next step. I had no idea where I was going to go or what I was going to do, and I hadn't created an ecosystem away from footy as much as I had want to. And she sort of said, "Dennis, you'll go again," and I still had some to give. And unfortunately, last year didn't turn out the way I wanted it to turn out. But it sort of provided me that 12 months to still live the dream.
Yeah.
But better prepare myself for, probably more mentally than anything else, for my transition out. And reading that, I didn't actually know that part was getting put in the book. They went behind me back and got my wife to write that. And you sort of go, far out, that's what she was thinking, and that's what she was seeing. And there's so many partners. We've all got a better half, or a better someone behind us, or beside us. And just to sort of see and read that, and now transition out. I transitioned to a business called Elephant & Co, which is business coaches, where I do leadership and cultural talks in businesses. And then it sort of became, my boss was doing that for, the owner of Elephant & Co was doing that for 12, 13 years, and it sort of was like, we're going in there to fix the business, but we're not fixing the people that are in this business. And it sort of became a bit of a passion of his, and that's where Business Fight Club came out. And the name, like you said earlier, was rule number one of Fight Club is don't talk about it. But we were like, well, no, rule number one of Business Fight Club is talk about it. And your people in business are your most important asset. And we were sort of thinking, well, let's start helping these businessmen fight for what matters most in their life. And it's like you said, a passion of mine to help people. And we've been fortunate enough to set up Business Fight Club, which is a 15-week online program where men stop, reflect and adjust, and answer the questions that most men are too scared to answer, or too scared to ask themselves, and be proactive with their health, be proactive with all areas of their life. You know, we focus on 5 Ps, which is your personal health, both mental and physically, your partner, if or if you don't have a partner, what type of partner do you want to be? You know, your parent, or what type of parent do you want to be? Your profession, and then play, finding time for yourself. And you know, most of these 5 areas will influence a man at some stage in their life, and it's about, well, be proactive, not reactive. And I think as men, it's I'm right. Oh, far out. I got to go to the hospital now because I've got cancer or something. And then we act, and it's like, well, it ain't working. You know, 6 men in Australia take their life every day, and I sit there and I go, that's a lot of men. And I just sit there and go, we're still stuck in the old way and the new way, and we've got this battle now going on between minds, and it's like, well, it ain't working, so we've got to try to do something. And I think that's where, you know, like I said, it's good to talk, but it's also now time to act as men and take some proactive actions.
Yeah, so the topic is, it's such a hot topic, this idea of men's health at the moment. As you said, 6 of us are taking our lives each day for reasons that I think in a lot of cases can be massively reduced. I mean, there's so much hope out there, and I've spoken to so many people who have been through situations where they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was that low. If only I had something just either guide me, direct me, let me know I was in it with a whole heap of other people. It would have been so helpful. But I'll just be interested from your perspective and the boys that you work with, or the crew that you're working with. What do you reckon it is that makes it such a difficult thing for guys to be real about, whether it's physical health, mental health, just to acknowledge where they're at? Like, what is it that's driven this passion for you guys to really focus on that?
Oh, look, the thing for me, I think it's many things. You know, there's stubbornness. You know, males are pretty stubborn blokes. You know, we like to think we know it all. We think we have all the answers. But for me, mate, the real driver behind it is, if you're healthy, and both mentally, physically, whichever area, you usually go home healthy, which means relationships prosper and live a healthier, which, you know, can help domestic violence issues, can help violence issues, can help all sorts of issues. You usually then get engaged with the environment and the community a lot more, because you don't want to be hidden away. You want to be out and about, which makes our economy, I guess, more prosperous, and the cycle continues. And I think if we can have more people that are well-rounded, and it's not about, I think the thing that social media, these things bring upon is, we play this comparison game. We're always constantly, oh, he's got a new jacket, I need that jacket. Or you know, it's like you're happy earning $100,000, and then you meet someone that's earning 150, and you're like, I want to get to 150, and you do things, and you put yourself under pressure, you work harder, you know, you miss out on relationships or whatever it is, and stress has become a build just to get to there. And then when you get to there, you play another comparison game. And I think as men, it's about time to just be the best version of you. What makes you happy, what makes you successful in your eyes, not in someone else's. You know, and I think that's where my passion sits. Is like, your journey and what makes you happy and what drives you day to day, and your purpose in life is different to mine, and that's beautiful. You know, that's great. But encouraging men to chase their journey and chase their dream, not someone else's, or not the so-called, you know, you've got to be this because this is successful. You know, gone are the days, I think, of money, fame and fortune and all that. That's not success. I think success is being happiness, healthy, you know, in a loving environment. And that's where I think is my passion behind Business Fight Club. It's like, well, men, let's be proactive. Let's find ways to invest in ourselves, so then we can ultimately invest in others.
It's funny, that subject you mentioned around the idea of success. And I don't know, have you seen Dave Chappelle's new stand-up show?
No, I haven't.
You should check it out. Just controversial, just because he's saying
all the things.
He's saying all the things you're not supposed to say, especially here in Melbourne. But what's really interesting about it, he touches on what I think you were pointing at there. He opens his show by saying, like, Anthony Bourdain, let's not forget, this bloke killed himself. He goes, this bloke, he travelled around, rich, famous, eating lunch and dinner with the best people this world could provide him with, and it wasn't enough for him. And then he goes into this story about his mate who dropped out of law school because separated with his wife, who took half his money. Now he's working at Foot Locker. He goes, never occurred to the bloke to take his life. He goes, it's not, success is never, it's not found in money, it's not found in status, it's not found in the things you just spoke about. But what's so deceptive about the whole thing is, for whatever reason, just mass advertising, social media, there's so many platforms or so many different ways that we're sold this illusion that, hey, once you attain this, then you'll finally feel a sense of satisfaction. As a bloke who's played at elite sport, and as a bloke who I think a lot of people would look up to and go, fire out, he's got it all together, he's got this whole thing. It's nice to be able to hear you just speak openly about, hey, it's I've tasted success, and it's not what you think it is or where you think it is.
Yeah. Oh, look, mate, it's scary. Someone asked me the other day, are you happier now than you were, in AFL? And I was like, it's hard to compare because I was living a different life, and what success for me then was different, and what my purpose in life for that moment of time was different. I always had that same end goal of where I wanted to go with, my wife and family and health and all of those things, but I sit there now and I go, I probably am happier. I think I'm the true, better version of myself, and that's what makes me happy. I still get days where I'm like, wow, I have no idea what I'm doing today, and I'm a little lost, and where do I go? And I have days where I'm smack bang on target and I'm going well. But I think it's one of those things. I think if you have a clear sort of goal set, you've got a purpose, you've got those on board, it's always good to do a journey together with someone or some people. And I think if you can encourage that and live that life, and that's what Business Fight Club is, it's all about creating a community of men that are on a journey together. We shouldn't have to fight alone. We shouldn't have to, because like you said, I'm telling you, there's someone out there going through the same issues or has gone through the same issues as what they're going through. And it's about, well, let's help each other. Let's give each other advice. Let's learn from one another, and let's live a better version, a better life that we can. Not the best. It's not about being the best. It's about being your best, and that's the important thing.
Yeah. What I've started to look. How old are you? 30, 31?
32. Yeah.
32. Me too.
Kick it on.
I don't like to admit it. It's an interesting point in our lives as well, because it's funny. You're no longer a kid. And I think as you start to transition into these 30s, the conversation of where are you going, what are you doing, it starts to come up a little bit more. It's nice to hear that you still have those days where you're like, oh my gosh, I've got no idea what I'm doing. But what I also enjoy is whenever I speak to someone who's wise, I've learnt to ask, like, where did you find this wisdom? What was it that you've been through? What was it that you've actually endured to get the answers that you have? And it sounds like there's a lot of solid truths in what it is that you're sharing now, but I can imagine it's come through that trial, and especially in your book, what stood out to me was that transition from AFL footy into day-to-day life. Was that a super tumultuous kind of, or emotionally more than anything? I was just keen to hear about how did you deal with that? Just holy crap! Like what the heck is this? Like what am I going to do?
Definitely. And like you said, I definitely think the journey that I've taken since I was a young kid to where I am now has fostered who I am. I've had not the best, easiest running upbringing, but I'm forever grateful for it, because I sit there and go, it taught me skills, it taught me resilience, it taught me, friendship, relationships. You have to turn to people to help, and all of that. I've got a great father that if he had $20 in his wallet and I wanted it, he'd give it to me because he was of that mindset. I had a grandmother that passed away, and she was very religious and all about, helping people, and, the way she supported me. I've got a mother, and, my mother and father split. So, I had issues with women when I was older, not of violence or anything, but just of trust, and I don't blame my mum for that. I love my mother dearly, but, there's all these things that you grow along, and I think in life many of us are scared of failure. But I think that's where the true learnings come, and you would have heard it, you would have heard sayings, you would have seen quotes, but it's true. When you have a bit of a failure or an up or down, that's where the best learning happens. And I think that's where I encourage people to go out and fail at something, learn. Don't be afraid to, stretch yourself a little bit, and then you might not get there the first time, the second time, but you'll eventually get there. And and then when you go to touching on the transition side of things, it was mentally and emotionally draining. I sat there and I was like, in footy money I was probably on the lower spectrum, but in life money I was on a good little wage. And you sort of sit there and you go, right, how am I going to do that? I've got a half-finished podiatry degree. Okay, I've got a mortgage. I've got bills. Okay, how do I do that? Plus a uni degree. I no longer now can do my uni degree part-time because I don't have that sports tag next to my name where unis are a little bit more lenient for you. So I was like, okay, can't do podiatry. So there goes that purpose and what was driving me through footy. What's next? Okay, where, what, how? And that's where, like you said, my wife, she owns a great dance school and she's very, very happy doing what she does. And I was like, maybe I'll be a receptionist, and these are things that are going through my mind to how we can, I'm not one that, I like to provide for my wife. I like to be, there for my wife and, provide things and do things. But I'm not by no means like a chauvinistic male that I've got to be, you stay at home and I work. Not at all. I wish it was the other way around. But you do like to give, you do like to add your value and make sure that you're giving to the relationship and both financially and emotionally. And, there was passages there and where I was like, I was lost. But I was fortunate enough to meet my boss in Jeremy, who's also the president of the Park Richards Footy Club. And, he took me under his wing and, gave me some guidance and gave me a direction and gave me a new passion and a purpose. And, it's aligned with my values, it's aligned with who I am, it's aligned with what I love to do. And, it's, like I said, it's some days I wake up and I don't have all the answers, but other days I do, and it's just about chasing that dream.
Yeah. One of the things that I often get asked when we speak to an athlete on the podcast is in terms of exercise, in terms of daily habits, in terms of meditation, in terms of, are there any little things that are a part of your day-to-day life that you feel like really sort of foster this journey that you're on or help you out, especially on those days that you mentioned there's a bit of uncertainty of which way do I go and what do we do here? I know the feeling of being on fire and knowing exactly where you'd like to go, but those days where you wake up and you're like, I'm not 100% sure what we're doing here.
Worry, mate,
have you got anything that you do in those moments?
Look, I'm still keen on my personal health. I'm nowhere near as fit or anything like that. I'm not worried about the skin folds.
I still wouldn't arm wrestle you, but I hope these cameras picking up these guns because they still look alright.
Nah, mate, they're falling away, but I don't do it for that. I do it for just the ability to, I feel like when I get up in the morning and I go to the gym, I feel like my day's a lot more productive. If I get up and I sleep in, or if I sleep in, not get up, I feel like I'm a little bit more lethargic. So, the personal health, that's why I still play local footy. The body's not what it used to be. It takes a lot longer to get up, but it gets me out there. It gives me that competitive nature. It gives me that drive. It's what I've known for so long in my life, being a competitive person. So it gives you that little outlet, You get to go and bash bodies for 2 hours, and then you go, oh, sweet, cool. I usually pull up the sore of the two, but, I do that. I'm big on, mindfulness a little bit. We've got a reflection exercises through the business fight club, and my favourite one that I use a lot is called the golf shot theory. And you go and play golf and you can hit a score of 100. Yet when you're in the club rooms afterwards, you remember your good drive, you remember your good chip, or you remember the great putt, and you always go, Tyson got drive of the day, and Dennis got putt of the day, and you sit there and you focus on, no matter how bad the day was, usually you hit 90, but you hit 110, you still focus on the good. And I think that's where I've really changed my mindset through my transition was, during my career, I was always a pessimistic mindset. I was always, I'm not getting picked. And then when you do, you're like, yeah. But when you didn't, you're like, I knew that. Whereas now I've probably changed to looking at the positives, looking at the good, thinking positively and changing my mindset. So by doing this golf shot theory, it just asks you to, 5 minutes of the day, what are you looking forward to? What are you grateful for? And then at the end of the day, what are your 3 golf shots? What are the 3 shots that you did well? And they don't have to be massive, And, I read another book by Brian Tracy called Maximum Achievement, which is all about how your subconscious can actually control your conscious. And by subconsciously telling yourself stuff, it can actually happen, in some shape or form. And I'm a big believer now to start looking at the positive and negative things are going to come and you're going to have hits and misses and all that. But I think in life, I've got a roof over my head. I've got a beautiful wife. I'm able to sit here right now and do a podcast, in a warm area. Yeah. I've got clothes on my back. There's so many great things in my life. So I sit there and I start to focus on those. I don't need the Gucci pants or whatever it is, no banging on against Gucci. But, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't need these hierarchy things, and it's just as long as I've got so many positives, I think that's where my mindset's changed. And when I am having a tough day, that's okay too. But
it's one of those habits as well, isn't it? I think when it comes to the subject of just reframing the way you see a situation, so many people, when we speak about physical health, we understand a training program is going to help you physically. You want to get bigger, eat the right foods, hit the gym, lift heavy weights, and you'll start to put on a bit of size. I think the subject of mental health in so many people's lives, though it's a big subject, we're not 100% sure of the training programs that we can take and implement in order to make those changes. And one of the subjects that I've loved, it's a big word, it makes me sound smart for a sec, is neuroplasticity. Just the idea that the brain's got the capacity to rewire itself, to reshape itself. The ancient idea now that you're just stuck with the brain that you've got it's blatantly untrue. The brain's got this plasticity to realign itself with a more positive thought through continual practice. But it's easier said than done sometimes. I like the golf shot theory because it actually, it's a good comparison to a sport. Actually, that makes a lot of sense. It's something that takes a lot of practice, though, and I notice just in my own process of just changing the way I think, often, like any habit, it's a struggle. Most of the time when I wake up, I can't bother going for a run. I do it because I want to stay healthy. I do it because I want to feel good. I've started to try and take that approach into the way that I use my mind now. Go, okay, I can't be bothered really doing this, but I'm going to spend 5, 10, 15 minutes just looking at the gold shots, looking at the good shots from the day. And over time, just you start to catch yourself doing it a little more easy. I was speaking to a Spanish girl at my work the other day, and she was saying it freaked her out the first time she realised she was thinking in English. She goes, she just couldn't believe it. She's like, oh my God, I'm thinking English. And I've noticed that same kind of thing. At the start, it's like learning a new language. You start to speak it out. Then all of a sudden, you go, hang on a second. Like, I've taken this difficult situation so much better than I would have 6 months ago. Is that something that you've found? It takes a little bit of practice and repetition to make that stick?
Definitely. And you touched on physical health and that, but physical health is also just going to the doctor and getting a checkup. That's physical health, and making sure that your bloods are in order and all of these things, and doing the things that you have to do as you get older. When you're young and you're invincible, you don't have to do these things. But that's something that we try to educate men on. It's like, you don't have to be a muscle buff to be healthy. You can be a normal person and healthy and eat and do all these things, but keep track of that. And we were massively conscious, of repetition. It takes a while to create a habit. It does. It's not just going to happen. You don't just wake up and go around 5Ks. If you haven't gone anywhere, you've got to build to that. And we try to educate. That's why we've created Business Fight Club as a 15-week journey, because it does take time. You've got to be able to invest in yourself regularly. You've got to be able to find time for yourself regularly, and it doesn't have to be, right, I'm going to spend 2 hours reading a book. It could be I'm reading 15 minutes a day of my book, and and that becomes a habit. It's all these little things, but it's I guess it's about, what are you busy about? And I sit there and I go, 9 times out of 10 you go, how are you going, mate? What's going on? You're like, oh yeah, busy. And it's like, we've just become so conscious to accept that. But I'd beg to differ. If someone said to me, mate, I'm bored and I'm happy, I don't reckon I'd ever meet someone that would say that. You want to be busy. You want to be doing stuff. So the crucial thing is then, well, what are you busy about? And that's the thing that you've got to try to get right. It's, what are you busy about? Are you sitting at a desk from 9 to 5 when you can leave at 4 and be productive with your kids or your wife or whatever it is, and that hour that you're at the desk isn't really doing anything anyway? Or is it, you're wasting time in front of a social media? We've got a time management tool where you just clock every it's half an hour blocks, but I was pretty anal and did it in 10-minute blocks, and I blocked every 10 minutes of my life for a week. And for that week, I spent 4.5 hours one-on-one with my wife. So that doesn't include just sitting on the couch watching telly. 4.5 hours with my wife. I spent 4 hours and 50 minutes scrolling through social media. And I just sit there and go, so when someone says, oh yeah, Dennis is busy, like, am I busy about the right things? Sometimes you need the social media outlet. Sometimes you need your television. Sometimes you need your couch. Sometimes you need just sitting in a room, But that's what we got to try to get right. It's, what are you busy about? Because I'd be astounded if I went up to someone and said, "How you going, mate?" And he goes, "Yeah, bored. I'm so happy." Like, it wouldn't happen.
It's
you know?
true. It's
like,
the biggest lie about this retired lifestyle, laying on a beach in the Bahamas, just sitting there doing nothing with your cocktail.
You talk to men and that's their biggest fear, you know,
Yeah.
retirement and women, you know, like, sorry about that. But, you know, so many people go, well, what if you don't have that next transition? You know, so many people go through transitions from changing jobs to stay-at-home mothers that then suddenly want to get back in the workforce, and they've been out of the workforce for 4 years, you know, raising a kid, and all of a sudden it's like, can I, can't I? Yet probably being a mum, you get more skills, you probably get more degrees being a mother, the things you got to do and that, you know, like, yet they're not, you can't write them on a piece of paper. So that's a transition, you know, changing jobs, retirement, so many, leaving sport, whatever it is. And I think we just got to be able to, be busy doing what is right for us.
Yeah, I'm just going to rewind a couple of seconds because I want to get back to that repetition subject for a moment. And before we press record, you were speaking about how there's mindfulness is it's a bit of a sexy subject at the moment, or mindset and health and well-being, which is great. But at the same time, part of that whole package is the sense that, okay, we're going to come into a business or a sporting club or a school or wherever it is that we're going. Yep. We're going to offer a 60-minute presentation, get our paycheck and say, hey, see you next year, hopefully. And as inspiring or as exciting or as funny or whatever you want to call it, as that talk might be for that amount of time, once the kid leaves the school or once the bloke leaves his business, it's just another thing that happened during his day. So I like this idea, and would love you to expand a bit more on this 15-week program, because it is something once a boss or once the employees can see the value of going back, 15 weeks is the perfect amount of time to start changing health and fitness and things like that as well. So it only makes sense to, if you're looking at an all-encompassing sort of, health and wellness and just mastery program, that you take that time to build it. Is that your brains behind that, or who came up with the idea to make this a bit more of an extensive thing? I feel like it's a bit different to what quite a lot of people in this position are doing. Yeah,
I think for me, mate, I've sat in many workshops, and I don't mean to be any disrespect to these workshops, because I think they're doing a great job and starting a great conversation. And I've sat in many where you get people come in and speak about a topic, gambling, alcohol, drugs, all of these things, your mental health, suicide, all of these things, and you sit in a room and they ask you questions and they quiz you on things, and they have different ways of showing stats and figures, and you sit there and go, yeah, wow, and you're pretty much a recipient, you're not a participant. And you receive all this information, and they ask you really thought-provoking questions, and they start a great conversation, but like you said, after 1 hour, 2 hour, whatever it is, they walk out the door and say thanks, and you sort of go up, shake their hand and say, hey, I really appreciate that talk, or I got a lot out of it, but then there's some that aren't as outspoken in front of a crowd of 20, 30, 1,000 people, that might be sitting there going, okay, that started my journey, but now that person's gone, where to now? And that was like where I sort of thought, like, I love going on journeys with people. I love, helping someone and seeing where they get to, or vice versa, them helping me and them being on the journey with me to see where I got to. So that's where it sort of come from, this whole, you read all the studies, and 90 days to create a habit, and what's 90 days? It's about, 12 sort of weeks. Let's push it out a little bit more. But then you find, well, it does take that conscious, I've got to work on this. And then for the first 4 or 5 weeks, I've got to do it. I've got to find time. And but then it sort of becomes more normal, and then you go through it. And it was just more about for me, it was about, getting men to go on a journey. And ultimately getting them to create habits for themselves in their 5 Ps that I spoke about earlier. It's about create healthy habits, and create habits that you want to fight for, create habits that make you the best version of yourself, because if you're the best version of yourself, you're giving to people your best versions, so that's going to make them better people, and ultimately, mate, we're a happier world after that.
It's a good point. It's a good point. what was I going to say? I'll edit this part out so we don't look like I'm a
That's
dickhead.
all right, mate. It's all good.
I had a bloody question lined up for you.
Something to do with program, 9 weeks, workshops.
What was it? I'm going to leave this in just so I have to suffer the cost. This is going to be one of my bad strokes. This is going to be one of my putting efforts.
You know what? There's nothing wrong with it.
I'm going to force myself to sit through. No, it doesn't matter. That's okay. Hey, we've got about 10 minutes left before I wanted to wrap it up with you. A couple of things that I wanted to speak to you about is just the mindset aspect. We've touched on it quite a lot today. That reprogramming, reshaping. It's obviously big in the business world, but it's also this is what it was. It's also big in the sporting world. It's obviously, is this something that's limited to businesses, or are you working with guys in all different avenues?
No, definitely. I think we started with Business Fight Club to break the connotation of Fight Club. You know, ideally it is Fight Club. Ideally it is all men. It's an online program. Any man can go to it. You know, give myself a little bit of a plug. businessfightclub.co. You know, all men can get online, sign on up. It's $99 for a 12-month subscription. I want to keep building. I want to do things like this. You know, chats, learn. You know, 10-minute audio bites where you might sit down with Tyson and say, tell us a little bit about what helps you. What position are you in, where you go, and how you're getting there. You know, and I think I want to create a community of men that educate and help men. You know, and that's where we're building to. But yeah, for me, it's aimed at everyone, every man at the moment. And you know, I sit there and I understand that. What about women and all of that? And you know, but I think women do life face to face. They'll sit here like this at a cafe, anywhere, and actually talk life. Whereas men tend to do life side by side, and we'll drag a mate through, or we'll just, you know, we'll sit there and be like, come on mate, tap his back and keep him going. But we never really confront the issues or have that hard conversation with someone, or sit down and go, mate, what you're doing is wrong. Or, you know, we cover and we mask things a lot with humour, and that's how we avoid that's how we have the awkward conversation. We make it humorous in a way, and so you sit there and go, there's not a lot for men that are just going whack, like here you go, like have those conversations with yourself, like what are your defining moments, what's made you the person you are today, from anywhere, both good, bad and negative. Who are your mentors? Who are people in your life right now that have shaped who you are today? You know, what investment are you doing? What's it mean to be a dad to you? You know, what do you want to be? Like, and asking these questions to get them to think, like, what are your convictions? You know, what are you really, truly, honestly believing and passionate about? You know, and I think any man can be asked those questions, and I encourage, you know, it's time to change. It's time to talk, but more importantly, like, I think it's time to act. You know, and we've got to be proactive in our health.
Yeah, man, I reckon you'd be unreal at starting a podcast. One of my good mates up in Sydney, who I do quite a few episodes with, we often say that one of the things we like about this, once you hit record, it's like it almost gives you an excuse in a way to speak about the real issues, the big issues. I sit across the table from so many people and go, I can't believe I'm sharing this right now. But it's an excuse. It's an eye to eye. It's a face to face, and it helps you get around that human. It helps you go, okay, if we're going to speak about this, let's speak about it for real. Like, what are we struggling with? What are we going through? What can help? And what are the people who look like on the other side of it? I feel like it's always the people who have been through these journeys and been through the most pain that seem to have the most to offer. And I think that's a big encouragement, not only to us, but to anyone who's listening to the work that you guys do.
Yeah, look, mate, everyone's got a story. And I sit there and go, you know, like, my journey is no tougher, no easier than anyone else's, because we experience things different. We all are. But I think it's important to understand that it's your journey and start taking control of it. You know, you're in control of your life. And I think as men, women, kids, you know, we've got to start taking control of it. You know, you only look at it now too with kids these days, and where's that going to go? You know, like, all of a sudden now you come 8th, you get a ribbon. Now, is that good, bad or indifferent? I don't know. I'm not one to judge yet, and I don't know where it's going to go. But, you know, the real world ain't like that. You know, if you come 8th, you ain't getting the job, you know, and things like that. And it's like, where are we going? How are we doing it? And it's like, well, my encouragement to everyone is, it's your life. You define your success. You define your happiness. You control where you put your time. You control how you respond to things. You know, I read a quote today. It's 10% of life is what we experience. 90% of life is how we react to it. and it sort of made you think, like I could look at today and think, what a miserable, doomy day. I'm upset. I don't want to be around. Or I could look at it and go, you know what, Rain, I'm going to go jump in that puddle like a little kid, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, people will look at me and go, what the hell is that grown man doing jumping around in puddles? Yes. But, you know, I'm in my own little happy place, you know, and that's where, you know, you've got a choice. You've got a choice on how to view things. And that's not saying when it's a hardship, put on a smile and go, yeah, thanks, like I'm happy my father's passed away or anything like that, you know. Of course not, but it's about, you know, how would that person want you to live? Where do they want you to do? How would they want you to be remembered, etc., etc., etc. And just living a life that you control. It's your journey. It's your destination. It's where you want to get to. No one else should control that.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And it's actually such an important point, especially being a Carlton supporter. It would have been the most depressing year. Are you still a Carlton supporter?
I am still a Carlton supporter.
Yeah, or are you a Carlton supporter, I should say?
Yeah. Look, I was a North man growing up, but... yeah, when you've been there for 10 years, it's you're part of the furniture for all that time. So, yeah, no, look, obviously they've turned the corner, which is good, mate.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I don't watch a lot of footy.
No.
You know, I love my local now, and first thing I find myself doing is looking up local scores and seeing what's going on. And like I said, I just like the community. I love being engaged in it. I love seeing people smile, and I think being able to play local footy, except for when you're losing and everyone on the sidelines doesn't like the coach, but besides that, mate, it's pretty good. So,
speaking of local footy, I can't let you go without having a quick chat about how we feeling next.
Tomorrow, mate. Yeah, prelim final.
Oh, here we go.
Who would have thought against Croydon? Yeah, look, feeling confident without arrogance. You know, I feel like our best footy can match it with anyone. You know, Croydon and Doncaster East have probably been the two teams that have stepped up a little bit above everyone else, mate. But yeah, feeling confident. You asked me when I first walked in here how you feeling about it and all that, and I said, probably more tomorrow. But yeah, as I think about it, as it gets later in the day, I sort of start to get a little bit nervous. You know, my night routine, what I'm doing, how am I doing it, what am I going to go for, what am I going to eat, you know.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, mate, you know, we've got a great opportunity to play in a prelim final. You know, first year coach to get there is great, you know, and it's not just me. I've got a great team behind me, beside me, and in front of me, you know, and great bunch of boys that have bought into some of the antics that I've bought in, and you know, but ultimately, mate, we just go out there and play a game of footy. It doesn't change whether it's a prelim or a round one, mate. It's still a game of footy. The oval's the same, the poles are the same distance apart, and you just got to do the same thing, mate. So yeah, we'll see how we go.
You've got a bloody good bunch of cheerleaders down there. Actually, I shouldn't call them all cheerleaders because 90% of them were blokes, I think.
Yeah, the dominant mate.
I'm not sure they would like being called cheerleaders. But I tell you, they'll be up and about this weekend, eh?
They will be, mate. Yeah, look, we're pretty fortunate that our 19s and our reserves are already in the grand final, so we should have a big cheer squad there as well. You know, I know my wife's teeing up many people to come down, and yeah, look, it's great. It's great to have support. It's great to have so many people live a passion, you know, of common purpose and want the same sort of outcome. And they live and breathe the bumps and bruises just as much as the players. So, you know, I'd love to reward them and that as much as I'd love to reward myself and the boys and that. But, yeah, we'll soon find out because we've got an opposition that's saying the exact same thing. So, yeah, well, I guess we'll put my shield on, mate, and we'll go to war again.
Last session last night, was it?
Last session, well, for so far, hopefully not. Hopefully we've got one more
just
week.
Just for the week, yeah.
Yeah, just for the week. But no, yeah, last session last night, big, nice little dinner and all that. Team meal on a Thursday is always good banter and that. So, yeah, look, we'll see what happens. Hopefully we can get the three sides in because that'd be great. We had our girls get in as well. They came runner-up in the grand final, which, you know, was a great successful year for an inaugural team. So, club's in a good place, mate. So that's all we can keep worrying about.
Beautiful, man. Well, hopefully, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm hoping I'm going to be standing boundary side in a bit over a week's time, mate. Watching the boys get up.
Touch wood, mate. Touch wood. Like I said, it's a pretty high. You know, Division 1's been. You talk about stress. Why did I pick Division 1 in the AFL? That's the most stressful competition I've ever been part of. You know, one game from. You know, I think we're one game from relegation, and we got into the finals by like 2% or something. So you sit there and talk about stress and how do you cope with it. Well, yeah, there's many sleepless nights, mate.
Plenty of practice, mate. I could talk to you for much longer than we have, but I'm conscious of your time. I know you got to walk about 25 minutes back to your car.
It's hard to get parking around here.
Mate, did you park at Lynch Street?
Yeah, I did. I followed you down,
sorry,
mate.
I was going to say Lynch Street, sir, but anyway, they're nightmares sometimes.
It's all good. Appreciate
Brother,
it,
thanks
mate.
for stopping by, man.
Really
Really means a lot,
appreciate
and big fan of what you're doing.
Nah, thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Awesome,
Really do.
brother. Cheers, man.
Thanks,
That was
mate.
unreal. Dude, that was good.
Yeah.
Sorry I bloody got tongue-tied. I was so caught up in your story and you stopped and I was thinking, fuck, I hadn't thought of a question.
All good.
That was awesome. Man, I love what you said about busyness.
Yeah.
I mean, I could relate to 100 things what you said. Actually, I was going to chime in, but I didn't want to.
You should have chimed in,
no,
bro.
No, I know you wouldn't have cared, but I didn't want to. But that busyness stuff is so true, man.
Yeah, it's funny, mate. It's just we just become accepting of it. You know, good or busy.
It's funny
Yeah.
because
It's true.
It's so true about the like. Well, how you going? Yeah, busy, mate. Like,
Yeah.
It's like I've been saying. I literally was saying this to my wife the other day. I've been saying I'm busy for 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just life.
Yeah.
And the way you put it was awesome because you're like, where are you going to be busy?
Yeah.
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 So that's awesome.
No, it's good, mate. Like I said, it's just one of those things. I think, I just every time I shake someone's hand, how you been, mate? Yeah, busy, and it's like, yeah. You haven't really told me anything. Like you haven't told me nothing, you know. And
Yeah.
I think as men, like you said, like we'll talk sport, we'll talk, politics, we'll talk all of these things, but we never actually get to the bottom of what busy really is. You know, like busy. You haven't been with your wife for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, what are you busy about,
I
or
was thinking
things
about
like
this,
that?
not to keep dying.
Yeah, no, you're right, mate.
But with the wife thing, I was struggling last year, especially between business, like leisure, fun, and then my wife. But I was struggling like putting my wife as a category of those things.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my mate about it. He's a legend, and he's like, mate, it's not about like work, family, and
Nah.
he's like, all of this is like, it's all about your family.
Yep.
Like the business part is when you're working hard for your business in a healthy way, you're actually working towards your family
Yep.
in that too. And it's not so much categories as it is
Yeah.
like a triangle. And that kind of helped me out.
Oh, mate, the realistic thing is we've got 24 hours a day. Most of us would sleep, hopefully. You try to get your 8 hours sleep. You got to work 8 hours, most people.
Right.
So you got 8 hours for everything else. So you're never going to be able to sit there and go, oh, beautiful, I actually had a mentor. Now, I'm probably going to stuff up his story a little bit, but he talked about life in 4 test tubes. You got work, partner, kids, and it might be social or something like I can't remember exactly. But he talked about, and he goes, you've only got this much water.
Yeah.
So you've got to tip it amongst the test tubes and
in the correct amount.
in the correct amount. And, right now my parent one's empty. I'm not a parent. So you sit there and you sort of go, there's more in others. But then you sort of go, well, when I do have kids, where I don't get a new water bottle, I've got to grab the water from here, and it's understanding that that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to, it's okay if you're on a work trip for 2 weeks and you don't see your wife. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
You can't sit there and go, oh, my test tube's empty, I'm a failure. But it's about understanding that, and this is why we encourage stop and reflection and that. It's about, I've had a hard 2 weeks, I've been away, that's okay because I know where my goal's going. Right now I can tip a little bit more water back into these ones, and things like that. But at the end of the day, like, you've only got so much water.
Yeah,
and if you're not investing,
That isn't it? Yeah.
and if you're not investing back in yourself,
Yeah.
eventually, you keep drinking your water, you keep using it and then if you don't invest back into yourself,
Yeah.
well, someone's going to ask for you and you're going to give them an empty glass of water,
Yeah.
And it was funny, like this same mentor, he just sort of said, you wouldn't go to someone, you want to drink a water and just give them an empty glass, yet you'll give them a stressed, highly strung out person that doesn't want to be there, that's disengaged, and you'll go and say, yeah, no worries, mate, let's,
Yeah.
and, it's just important to understand that, you've only got so much water.
Yeah. And then you could go in and talk about boundaries.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah. And that's where, you just go like, men don't know how to say no.
That's true.
Many of us. Like, what are you doing tonight? You want to come to the pub? Yeah, okay. What are you doing tomorrow morning? Let's go for breakfast. Yeah, okay. And all of a sudden you're like, I just haven't had any.
Yeah.
And then you sit there and go, hey, how you been? Yeah, busy, mate. And I'm so busy trying to please other people that I haven't pleased myself.
Yeah.
And that's where, it's an interesting one, mate. Like, there's so many different philosophies, so many different ways to represent it. But I just think, be busy doing what you want to be busy doing.
Man.
And that's what we try to educate, blokes at the moment. But it's all people, like. if you want to go and draw stick figures for the rest of your life, go and do it.
Yeah.
Go and do it. Like, what makes that unsuccessful? You know, and that's where I just think we got to get as people. You know, and social media kills that. Like, as much as I love it, and it gives people an avenue. It gives people, you know, if it wasn't for socials and all that, podcasts and all of these things wouldn't be around, which start some great conversations. You know, but I also sit there and go, far out. Like, there's so many keyboard warriors and so many things like that.
You would have
The best
seen
thing I ever did was delete all. I mean, I still have like Insta and Facebook, but I don't have it on my phone.
Yeah.
It's like the best thing.
Mate, I got off Twitter because Twitter was the worst. Because obviously Twitter, you can just create any sort of handle, and you don't have to really, and you can just
do whatever you want.
Do whatever you want,
Yeah.
and mate, the things that got said about, you just sit there and go. And then you start believing it. And you go, I am a shit bloke. Hang on, no. You know, like, and you start to go around like that. But it's just the way. It's
That'd
the
be
world,
tough.
isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, but everyone does it, mate.
Big
Like,
stage,
everyone cops it in their own right. You know, whether you're here or here in the so-called spectrum of success.
I only got 5 likes.
Yeah, you know, but anyone, like everyone's, you know. You might get 30 and you only get 3.
Yeah.
You sit there and go, what a shit photo, you know. Whereas some people go, I get 30,000 and I only get 10,000, you know.
Exactly.
But I'll sit there and go, far out. You know, you talk about what is success. A lot of people, if you ask them what is success, would be the number of followers or likes they get.
Yeah.
And you sort of sit there and go, wow, you know. And people are losing the ability to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Because,
you
know, like... Hey Tyson, how you going, mate? Yeah, good to see you. Oh, yeah, thanks, mate. And then you go and see actually Tyson, you go, hey.
man.
Yeah, it's so true. I'm so busy.
Hey, yeah, cool. See you later. You know, and it's just we lose that connection. You know, you go to a cafe. Like I sometimes, as creepy as this sounds, so don't judge me.
I feel like I'm about to say I do the same
but
thing.
I go to cafes sometimes,
Yeah.
and I'll grab the newspaper.
Yep.
But then sometimes I'll just sit back and look at people and just go, really? Like this is where you sit at a table like this. I could bring 6 of my mates, stand around this table like this, and it'd be like, "It's been happening, mate." Yeah, no, going well. Yeah, you know, and it's like far out. Like, are we really that like, you know, we've become a creatures now of like we want it now.
Yeah.
I can get it now.
Totally.
So no, it's all good, mate. It's good fun.
Yeah,
that's unreal. I hope that was recording for that last 10 minutes.
It was,
that was good. Hey, do you mind if I grab a quick snap with you?
Go for it, mate.
Social media.
But if I get 3 likes,
make sure you're.
I got a couple photos. You probably saw me, but I got a couple photos.